On November 6, 2015, drug dealer David Dahi Douglas was out enjoying Dublin's nightlife. A former zookeeper with IRA ties, he hopped between Northside pubs before making a fateful choice to end his night at a lap dancing club in the city centre. What seemed like a casual decision would soon set in motion of events leading to his death. That same evening, members of the Kinahan crime gang, including their leader Daniel Kinahan, were gathered at the Red Cow Hotel for a boxing event. In 2 days, Jamie Kavanagh, the son of murdered gangster Gerard Hatchet Kavanagh, was set to fight in a national stadium. At the time, tensions were sky high. The murder of Gary Hutch in Spain just weeks earlier had the Kinahans bracing for payback. The mood turned chaotic when one of Kinahan's men stepped outside for a cigarette and spotted a suspicious vehicle lurking in the parking lot. He darted back inside, spreading panic. A group of 50 Kinahan cronies scrambled for their cars and fled the scene, with Daniel Kinahan himself whisked away through a back door. Their fear wasn't unfounded. As it turned out, a gunman in the suspicious vehicle had attempted to shoot, only for his weapon to jam. But the message was clear. This was a declaration of war. The Kinahan associate who happened to step outside for a smoke that night and caused the panic was described by witnesses as Liam Bop Roe, one of Ireland's most notorious gangsters and a trusted lieutenant of the Kinahan Cartel. In the hours after the Red Cow incident, some Kinahan gang members, including Bop Roe, headed to Dublin's Angels nightclub on Leeson Street, hoping to shake off the earlier scare. Roe partied into the early hours, but as he glanced across the room, his mood shifted. He spotted a face he couldn't quite place at first, but knew he'd seen before. There, on the opposite side of the club, stood Dahi Douglas, unaware that his fate was about to be sealed. Roe quickly relayed his suspicions to his fellow gang members, claiming that Douglas was one of the men in the car during the failed hit earlier that night. With that tip, the wheels of revenge were set in motion. That fateful night at Angels nightclub sealed the destinies of Douglas and his friend Darren Kearns, who had ties with both the Hutch family and the Kinahan Cartel. Both men were quickly framed as the would-be attackers from the Red Cow incident, and by the following weekend, the secret cartel meeting had decided their fate. Within just 48 hours, Douglas was ambushed and shot multiple times while walking his dog in Cabra, but managed to survive. A month later, Kearns was fatally gunned down as he left the restaurant with his wife, also in Cabra. And by June, the Kinahan gang caught up with Douglas once more, killing him in cold blood outside his wife's shop in Dublin's south inner city. Bop Roe's cousin, the notorious Fat Freddie Thompson, would later be sentenced to life for Douglas's murder. The deaths of both men would later prove to be a tragic case of mistaken identity. CCTV footage revealed that neither Douglas nor Kearns had been at the Red Cow that night, nor did they have any involvement in the Kinahan-Hutch feud. The brutal killings underscored the Kinahan gang's escalating paranoia and ruthlessness at the time, and the infamous Regency shooting hadn't even taken place yet. Bop Roe, the first cousin of gangster brothers Liam and the eventually murdered David Byrne, had been entrenched in organised crime for most of his adult life. Known for his permanent tan, striking blue eyes, and bright white smile, the Drimnagh native first came into public attention during the infamous and deadly Crumlin Drimnagh feud. This feud ignited after a police raid in March 2000 at the Holiday Inn on Pierce Street, Dublin, where officers discovered a drug operation in full swing. 3 members from Crumlin and Drimnagh were caught cutting cocaine, and a haul of 2 kilos of cocaine and 49,000 ecstasy tablets was seized. The 3 lads were arrested, but one, a 20-year-old named Declan Gavin, was released without charges after just 2 days. Gavin's release stirred suspicion within the gang, though he'd just stepped out of the hotel room as the raid occurred and wasn't caught red-handed. Some in the gang suspected he was an informant, a rat, given leniency for cooperation. The suspicion only grew as his 2 companions faced serious charges for possession with intent to sell, leading to lengthy prison sentences. But despite the lack of evidence, the labelling of Declan Gavin as an informant caused a deep rift within the group. This split led to the formation of 2 rival factions, with notorious gangster Brian Rattigan leading one side and Fat Freddie Thompson, Bop Roe's cousin, leading the other. The feud's first fatal blow came the following year when Declan Gavin, a close friend of Thompson's, was fatally stabbed outside an Abracadabra restaurant in Crumlin. His murder triggered a series of tit-for-tat shootings, claiming the lives of 15 men over time. At Gavin's murder trial, David Byrne, deeply involved in the feud on his cousin Thompson's side, testified against Brian Rattigan, leading to Rattigan's eventual conviction for Gavin's death. But David wasn't Thompson's only cousin caught up in the bloody conflict. Bop Roe also played a major role. He was suspected in 3 feud-related shootings, including 1 murder. Gardaí believed Roe was part of the gang responsible for murdering Joe Rattigan, the younger brother of Brian Rattigan, in revenge for Declan Gavin's death. In July 2002, 18-year-old Joe was fatally shot by a 2-man hit squad on Cooley Road in Drimnagh, and detectives suspect that Roe was one of the gunmen. The case remains unsolved, with no charges ever filed. That same year, Brian Rattigan himself narrowly escaped a similar fate. A 4-man hit squad attempted to kill him at a house in South Dublin, shooting him at close range. Miraculously, Rattigan survived by leaping out of an upper-floor window. Gardaí suspect Roe was part of that team, believed to be one of 3 gunmen who stormed the house while a 4th man drove the getaway car. No one has ever been charged for this attack either. Of the other suspects, 2 are now deceased, and 1 is serving time in prison. The deceased suspects were Paddy Doyle and Darren Gagan. Doyle, notorious for at least 2 murders in his own town, fled to Spain in 2005, aligning himself with the Kinahan Cartel. However, the cartel's trust in him soured over time, and they let Gary Hutch, who was still a Kinahan associate at the time, help orchestrate Doyle's murder, even accompanying him in the car when Doyle was shot outside Estepona. Ironically, Hutch himself later became a target of the Kinahans, meeting his end near Estepona in September 2015. Darren Gagan, deeply entangled in the crumbling feud, was killed by his own faction in Dublin the same year Paddy Doyle fled the country. Roe was also suspected in an attempted murder in Dublin's Coombe district in June 2002, a month before Joe Rattigan was killed. However, the target survived and Roe was never charged. In 2007, he was arrested after allegedly threatening to kill a bouncer at a pub on Dame Street. 2 years later, he was fined €250 for obstructing a Garda drug search. In March 2012, Roe faced more serious allegations. Arrested in the UK alongside Liam Byrne and their close associate Sean McGovern, who would later be injured in the Regency Hotel attack, Roe was questioned about death threats, blackmail, and possession of burglary tools. The trio allegedly tried to intimidate a businessman to collect a €60,000 debt, although no charges were ultimately brought against them. Later that year, Roe served a 4-month jail sentence after Gardaí raided his apartment and found stolen designer handbags. The police had expected to find firearms, but instead uncovered the stolen items. Roe also unsuccessfully tried to reclaim 2 Rolex watches, worth nearly €50,000, that were seized in a separate raid for firearms at a property in Crumlin. Initially a mere foot soldier, Roe quickly rose through the cartel's ranks, gaining enough influence to avoid direct involvement in shootings. In August 2016, Roe was again arrested, this time in a money laundering investigation tied to the cartel. But again he was released without charge, slipping the net once more. However, 2 years later, he became one of the central figures in a cab ruling. He was identified as a senior member of the Byrne Organised Crime Group, BOCG, in a successful cab application to the High Court, which resulted in the seizure of approximately €1.5 million worth of assets. These assets were found to have been purchased with the proceeds of crime from 11 BOCG members. With ties to international criminal networks in the UK, Spain, and the Netherlands, the BOCG was deeply involved in drug trafficking and violent crime, and was part of the broader Kinahan Cartel. For years, Roe, alongside Liam Byrne, who was still at large at the time, and Sean McGovern, was considered a key figure in the Kinahan logistics team in Ireland. In court, he was recognised as a trusted lieutenant and vital collaborator to Liam Byrne, the kingpin who ran a major local crime network and oversaw Daniel Kinahan's operations across Ireland and Europe. By then, the deadly nature of the Kinahan-Hutch feud was undeniable. The conflict escalated dramatically in February 2016 when David Byrne was shot dead at the Regency Hotel. Roe, David's first cousin, was present during the shooting and was seen outside the hotel with Liam Byrne while David's lifeless body lay in a pool of blood at the hotel's reception. Meanwhile, the Criminal Assets Bureau were hot on their tails. Eventually, after years of investigation, the evidence it collected provided a rare and detailed look into the gang's structure, finances, and operations in Ireland. As a result, the gang lost 29 high-end luxury cars, 3 electric bikes, a dune buggy, 4 Rolex and Breitling watches, 2 platinum and gold diamond rings, more than €26,000 in cash, and 2 houses in Dublin valued at over €500,000. However, the case uncovered more than just the gang members. It exposed their associates, partners, and even their parents, along with their lavish lifestyles, fraudulent businesses, money laundering schemes, international connections, and the millions they had amassed from criminal activities. Many of the top gang leaders behind the Irish drugs trade live abroad, and for good reason. As long as they are tax domiciled in other jurisdictions and have no assets in Ireland, they remain beyond the reach of CAB. The Kinahan gang is a prime example. Its leaders, Christy Kinahan and his sons Daniel and Christopher, have been tax domiciled overseas, initially in Spain and later in Dubai. But because they don't reside in Ireland, they rely on trusted individuals living in the Republic to manage their operations there. Someone needs to oversee the drug smuggling and distribution in Ireland, and that's where their logistics team comes in. These team members are well compensated to stay in Ireland for extended periods, sacrificing the relative security of life abroad. In doing so, they take on the risk of being targeted by CAB, a risk the Kinahans are unwilling to face themselves, which is why they outsource it. This risk of being the ones on the ground in Ireland, managing the drug operation, became all too real for Liam Byrne, Bop Roe, and Sean McGovern during the 2018 CAB case. Their primary target was Liam Byrne, who was considered the leader of the Byrne Organised Crime Group, BOCG, with strong connections to international criminal networks in the UK, Spain, and the Netherlands. The High Court ruled that the Byrne Organised Crime Gang set up businesses that appeared legitimate, but were actually used as fronts for laundering money earned through criminal activities. This was achieved through a network of car dealerships and other businesses operating in both Ireland and the UK. In June 2013, Liam Byrne established LS Active Car Sales at the Bluebell Business Park in Dublin. His trusted associate, Sean McGovern, was made a director of the company. However, LS Active did not function like a typical car sales business, as the majority of its cars were not for sale. Instead, they were reserved for the exclusive use of gang members, their partners, associates, and family members. In the 29 days leading up to the CAB raid in March 2016, not a single car was sold. Meanwhile, Byrne, Roe, and McGovern were deeply involved in the cartel's illicit business, paying others to transport and sell drugs in Ireland, effectively reducing their own risk of being caught with large quantities of drugs. However, just as they outsourced the risk of drug possession, the Kinahan gang also outsourced to them the risk of being targeted by CAB. By remaining in Ireland to oversee the receipt and distribution of drug shipments to other gangs, they took on the risk that the Kinahans themselves were unwilling to face. Despite its international ties, the Byrne Organised Crime Group is deeply rooted in tight-knit family and local connections in Dublin's South City. The group was so closely bonded that its members all lived near each other in a housing estate around Kildare Road in Crumlin. This area, described by the Criminal Assets Bureau as the stronghold out of which the BOCG operates, was at the very heart of their operations. Though he kept a low profile in recent years, Roe was regarded as one of the most senior members of the cartel in Ireland. He was a constant companion to Liam Byrne and played a key role in the gang before Byrne fled the country and was later imprisoned in the UK, where he's just been sentenced to 5 years on weapons charges. His extravagant lifestyle was laid bare in court, highlighting several lavish holidays to luxury destinations. Between July 2015 and June 2016, he travelled frequently to places such as the UK, US, and Spain. He also attended the Conor McGregor vs Chad Mendes fight at the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas, and later travelled to Dubai following the Regency Hotel shooting. Interestingly, none of these flights or tickets were paid for through an account in Roe's name. Additionally, Roe could not account for a bank deposit of €294,000, nor could he explain how he came to own 11 vehicles, most of them high-end luxury cars. As part of the CAB investigation, CAB did manage to seize an Audi A5 and a Kawasaki motorbike worth €38,000 from Roe. Bop Roe was the last known member of the Byrne gang understood to be still in Dublin. Unlike many of his criminal associates, he never fled the country when his gang's feud with the Hutch mob and associated Garda crackdown began. However, the Taliban gangster lived under severe pressure from his own associates in the cartel over a massive amount of money owed to the hierarchy of the gang, who were believed to be living in the Middle East to avoid the sanctions imposed on them by the US government. In 2023, Roe once again caught the attention of the Gardaí when he appeared to be involved in a violent campaign of intimidation against innocent families in Dublin, following an assault at a house party. A 20-year-old woman who had no criminal convictions was severely injured when a canister of nitrous oxide, also known as laughing gas, was thrown at her during the party. She suffered serious facial injuries and had to be hospitalised. Roe was believed to be one of the individuals involved in a subsequent campaign against the families of two young men whom they blamed for the assault. This campaign involved extortionate demands for up to €60,000, alongside death threats and threats to burn down their homes and vehicles. However, in May 2024, Roe received devastating news. He'd been diagnosed with cancer. 3 months later, he was admitted to St James Hospital for treatment of a blood disorder and sepsis. Ultimately, after falling critically ill, he passed away a few days later. Several of his family members were by his side when he died, and tributes to the cartel lieutenant have since been shared online by family and friends. Roe's funeral was held in Drimnagh, Dublin, and it was a stark contrast to the lavish display of wealth and power that marked his cousin David Byrne's funeral in February 2016, just days after he was shot dead at the Regency Hotel. There were no motorbikes leading the procession, nor were gang members dressed in expensive matching suits. No Garda tactical units or bomb-sniffing dogs were called in to prevent further violence. His coffin was adorned with floral tributes and photos of his cousin Liam Byrne and friend Sean McGovern, both of whom, unsurprisingly, were absent. This stark difference in the two funeral services highlights the dramatic shift in the gang's fortunes over the past decade. That was it for today's video. What are your thoughts on today's topic? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel if you'd like to see our next videos.